There's something telling about the title of this conference, Regaining Control. It's a version of the phrase that we've heard many times across the Western world over the last decade. In the United Kingdom, it was the famous slogan that drove Brexit in 2016, take back control. And that same year, here in America, a long shot candidate by the name of Donald Trump echoed the same call. Quote, our friends in Britain recently voted to take back control of their economy, politics, and borders, and now it's time for the American people to take back their future, end quote. There's a reason that every successful movement on the right seems to be speaking in these terms. There's a powerful instinct stirring across the Western world. It's an instinct that is yet to fully take shape as a self-conscious idea. At times, it still expresses itself in rough or unsophisticated terms. It does not have an army of sympathetic academics and intellectuals to articulate or refine it. It's a wholly organic and grassroots phenomenon, aspiring in spite of the fierce and coordinated efforts to suppress it. But today, it's one of the most powerful forces in politics in the modern West. It is a pervasive sense of alienation. And it has happened in part because of open borders and unchecked mass migration. For normal, everyday people, Americans, Brits, Frenchmen, or any other citizen of the West, it's often a visceral experience written into the rhythm of our day-to-day lives. It's felt directly in the transformation of their neighborhoods, towns, and cities. But even that is as much of a symptom as it is a cause. The reason a slogan like "Take Back Control" is so powerful is because of the sense that this fundamental transformation is taking place without the consent, let alone support of the people it is being imposed upon. It was never voted on. It was never determined by an election or a referendum. In America and England, in Hungary and Poland, in Italy and Belgium, in Germany and France, whenever and wherever it is put to a vote, the same sentiment appears. The polls tell the same story. Survey after survey, year after year, whenever and however the question is asked, the answer is still the same. Last year, a Gallup poll found that 55% of Americans have had enough with unchecked mass migration, while just 16% want to increase it. Earlier this year, a major YouGov poll found that in every Western European nation they surveyed, Britain, Denmark, France, Germany, Italy, Spain, and Sweden, huge majorities say immigration levels over the past decade have been too high. In Germany, that opinion was held by a whopping 81% of the population. And yet, nothing seems to change. The people vote for Brexit, and the immigration crisis gets worse. 3 years later, Boris Johnson wins a landslide victory, pledging to fulfill the promise of Brexit, and instead, immigration levels surge to all-time highs. Elites lie, smear, and censor the voices of their critics because they claim to know better. When I was Attorney General in Missouri, as was referenced earlier, I sued the Biden administration for colluding with tech platforms to silence their critics. In Europe, the situation is far more dire. They don't have to outsource censorship to big tech. The governments are doing it themselves. For many Europeans, the wrong kind of dissent can land you in jail. This is the true power of the phrase, take back control. It is deeper than any one policy issue or political debate. It is driven by a sense that citizens of the West are no longer sovereign in their own nations. It is a sense that the radical social, cultural, and political changes taking place all around us are happening without our permission, whether we want them or not. That the nation our children grow up in will be something unrecognizable, shaped by forces beyond our control. Many elites have seemed bewildered to discover that so many of their own citizens feel this way. But they have no one to blame but themselves. For years, any articulation of these ideas was denounced and suppressed by the people in power. To this day, many of them still continue to insist that there is something dark and ugly in even the most moderate and reasonable expression of discomfort with unchecked mass migration. But why, precisely, are these ideas so wrong? None of the point and sputter histrionics ever take time to make that case. Of course, People want to grow up in a community and a country where their neighbors share their culture and their values. And it is a disgrace that our immigration system for the past few decades seems custom built to undermine it. In short, the reason people feel like they have lost control is because they have. We cannot claim to be a self-governing people if we have no say over the character of our own communities. We cannot claim to be a sovereign nation if we cannot control who enters, who stays, and who is removed. That principle is the cornerstone of the nation state itself. It is the principle that follows from every concept of the nation itself. To know who and what your country is, you must know, and of course, what your country is not. You must have boundaries marking territory where your country begins and another country ends. You must have a legal and political system that distinguishes between citizen and non-citizen, and you must enforce those distinctions without apology or compromise. All of this boils down to a simple question. Do we have the right to decide who enters our country and how many may come? This is the essence of the debate, and the truth is, many people in power don't really believe that we do. This is the centerpiece of their vision of a global world where everyone has the right to go and come as they please, and the only borders that exist are the walls around their own gated communities. In fact, many of our elites have embarked on a campaign of denationalization, dissolving our nations into the machinery of a global liberal order. They have used the tools of that order as a weapon. Our broken asylum system is one of the many examples. Rather than a narrow and exceptional category, it has become an open invitation to anyone who can learn the right magic words to say at the border. Even more importantly, it has shifted sovereignty over these issues from the people, exercising their will through their elected representatives, to judges, activists, lawyers, NGOs, and international bureaucrats. We see the same forces at work in our legal immigration system. Earlier this year, the United States, or I should say every year, the United States admits more than 1 million legal immigrants and countless more temporary visa holders who become permanent residents. Many arrive through programs like the H-1B visa or make their way into our workforce through the OPT pipeline. These were sold as ways to attract the best and the brightest. But in many cases, they have instead become a corporate labor arbitrage scheme, a means for an unholy alliance of corporate technocrats and foreign interests to replace American workers with cheap labor from abroad. That is not high-skilled immigration. It is a systematic dispossession of American workers. And the fact that it is legal makes it worse, not better. The Trump administration understands all of this, and they have done more to confront these issues in the past 10 months than DC leaders achieved in the past 2 decades. Remain in Mexico is back. Catch and release is gone. Illegal border crossings have plummeted to their lowest levels in 50 years. It's in his first week in office, the State Department declared that the era of mass migration must end. And for the first time in a generation, American diplomacy is being used to stop mass migration rather than to facilitate it. We have frozen refugee intakes, defunded the UN migratory bureaucracy, and cut off the spigot of hundreds of billions of taxpayer dollars funding the NGO industrial complex. And now, we're finally taking a look at the rampant abuse of programs like H-1B. The one big beautiful bill we passed in Congress earlier this year was the single largest investment in immigration control ever made in the history of American politics. We allocated over $170 billion in new funding for border and enforcement operations. We doubled ICE detention capability, doubled Border Patrol budget, provided funding for 10,000 new ICE agents, and secured more than $46 billion to finish the border wall. We even instituted the first ever remittance tax of its kind in American history. It's nowhere near as high as I'd like it to be, which is why I introduced one that would boost the fee from 1% to 15%. But it's an incredible first step when you think about where our party was on immigration just a decade ago. And it opens the door for us to implement a stronger remittance tax down the road. Everyone in this room knows that we have a lot more work to do. We're in the opening chapter of this fight, not the finale. But the energy has shifted. Everyone can feel it. The catastrophic immigration crisis of the Biden era has invited a backlash. The backlash gives us a chance to do what normal people want us to do that would have been beyond belief or the realm of possibility just a few years ago. The Overton window has shifted dramatically over the past few years, especially on the American right, thanks in no small part to the influence of President Trump. For years, it seemed like the nations of the West had forgotten how to say no. We were governed by a kind of suicidal empathy. We measured our moral virtue in direct proportion to the number of refugees we let in or the share of immigration laws we waived or ignored. Those who criticized this arrangement were denounced as unfeeling, cruel, or hateful. But that's now over. We're taking control back. We're drawing lines. We're learning how to say no again. From a community in Missouri to a community in Europe, the demand is the same. The right to be a country again. The right to decide who and what we are, not as abstractions, not as economic units, not as interchangeable widgets in a global market, but as nations, as cultures, as real sovereign people with its own unique past and future in full control of its own destiny. Thank you all for being here.